So this video is going to be a little bit different than the videos that I typically make on this channel or on my main channel, now let's be honest. And I was originally going to post it on a much older channel that I don't even use anymore, but then I realized that this channel is literally just called David Tate. And so technically I can post whatever I want on this, and who knows, maybe y'all are interested in this stuff too. And so without further ado, let's talk about Superman. Today I want to talk about the new Superman trailer that was released earlier this morning. And in order to understand why I want to talk about it, first off, you just need to know I am a really, really, really big Superman fan. Growing up, I only ever had one pet. It was a dog, and his name was Krypto. My favorite TV show growing up was Smallville, as you can see right over my shoulder. And even whenever it comes to designing this whole YouTube studio for my main YouTube channel, I had to set aside multiple different shelves just to hold my Superman stuff. I've always loved Superman. In fact, I love Superman so much that I am literally making a video talking about Superman and posting it on a channel that I haven't posted on in over 3 years, simply because I don't even care if anybody watches this. I just want to talk about it, right? And so whenever I heard that they were going to be releasing a new trailer for the Superman movie that's coming out in 2025 in July, whenever I heard that it was coming out at 8 a.m. Central Time today, I did what any other logical teacher would do. I'm a Bible teacher who works at a private school, and school starts at 8 a.m., the very same time that the trailer was being released. And so I did what any other logical teacher would do, despite the fact that we are in the middle of semester exams, despite the fact that the kids are stressing out about that. Whenever the kids came in, I told them to sit down and be quiet because we were going to watch the Superman trailer together projected on the whiteboard. And so that's what we did. And then as soon as the trailer ended, I said, all right, guys, clear your desks. Let's do this exam. Because I was just excited about this, right? And I wanted to see what exactly the plan was. And now that I've seen it several times, while they were taking their exam, I might have watched it a few more times on my own, I do have thoughts, and I want to share them. And like I said, I'm not even saying this because I want anybody to see it. I'm mainly saying it just because I want to document my reaction to this as a Superman fan, just more of like a historical basis, I guess. I just think it's kind of fun. And in order to really encapsulate my thoughts about this, I have to talk about how I've been feeling about this movie leading into it. And long story short, I haven't been very hyped about this movie. I just felt very weird about it in general. I've liked pretty much every Superman movie that's ever come out. Even the movies that I think are super cheesy, like Superman 3 and 4 with Christopher Reeve, those movies are terrible, but Christopher Reeve does a good job at it. And I don't really revisit those ones very often, but in general, I like I think we've had very good, like a lot of good Superman actors, and I just like Superman as a character in and of himself. And I really liked Henry Cavill, and I think that that's the main reason why going into this, I already had frustrations with the movie, right? And that's because I know a lot of people don't like the Henry Cavill version of Superman. I don't think anybody here really has anything against Henry Cavill himself. I think everybody kind of agrees that it's really just the hand he was dealt was that the scripts were kind of inferior and that the movies themselves were a little bit dark and stuff. But I actually liked them, right? I actually enjoyed the Henry Cavill version of Superman. I think that Man of Steel was definitely the best movie that he had, and then each one kind of goes downhill a little bit after that. But I still like them, right? Batman versus Superman, it is a guilty pleasure movie of mine. I realize it has a whole lot of faults. I realize that it's got a lot of issues. I don't know why the heck they included Doomsday in that movie. I don't know why they killed Superman off in the second movie with him. Well, actually, I do know why. It's because Warner Brothers was, interfering and they were trying to advance all this stuff. But I still like the movie, right? I still think it's a good movie, and I was really excited whenever they announced that Henry Cavill was going to return. And in fact, I still remember a few years back, me and my fiance, we went to the homecoming game at the school that I work at. And after the homecoming game, me and her went to see the movie Black Adam. And I'm going to be honest with you, I had no desire to see Black Adam. I did not care about Black Adam as a character. I did not want to see the movie. The only reason I went to go see Black Adam, and I'm pretty sure it was on the midnight premiere, even though it's not a midnight premiere, it was like 7 p.m. The only reason I went to go see Black Adam is because there had been rumors that Henry Cavill was going to show up in an after credit scene. I went and watched that whole movie just to see Henry Cavill at the end, and sure enough, he shows up, and then a few days later, Henry Cavill announces, yes, it is confirmed, I am back as Superman, and I was delighted, right? I was so excited that Henry Cavill was going to be returning as Superman because while I did like the movies he was in, I always thought that he had potential for more, right? And to me, whenever I think of like anybody who looks like Superman, I mean, Henry Cavill is great. And like, honestly, I think of both Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill whenever I think of just the picture perfect Superman, right? And that's kind of goes back to what I've said already. I don't think we've really had a bad Superman, right? I mean, I think Christopher Reeve did a great job. Smallville was my favorite show with Tom Welling, but he was really more focusing on the Clark Kent aspect of things. I think Tyler Hoechlin, whatever it is, I think he did a fantastic job in Superman and Lois. I think that he probably has the most well-rounded version of the character that we've ever seen. Brandon Routh, he did a good job, but he really didn't really get to step into his own that much. But I liked all those Supermans, right? And I was excited to see what they were going to do with Henry Cavill. And I was so pumped. And then literally like, I think it was like less than a month later, they all of a sudden announced that WB has decided to do something totally different and that Henry Cavill is out. And to me, that just put like a bad taste in my mouth from the get-go. Because I was like, well, like this seems messed up. Henry Cavill is evidently somebody who is passionate about the things that he does, right? He's just known as being this like nerd, right? And so he's very passionate about the character. And it seemed like something was definitely going on behind the scenes that really was just frustrating me to where everybody kind of collectively agrees he was done dirty by Warner Brothers. And so they were already kind of starting off in a negative space for me. And then it was also announced that James Gunn was going to be the one in charge of the new DC stuff. And that wasn't super encouraging to me either. I like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I actually still haven't seen the third one, though I've heard that it is probably the best one from some people's perspective. I thought the first one was really good. The second one I thought was kind of mediocre at best. But the Suicide Squad, I just wasn't a big fan. And in general, James Gunn's sense of humor is just not really my sense of humor. It's very different. And I know that he said that this movie was not going to be, like the Superman movie, wasn't going to have that same sense of humor. But in general, just his directorial style and his taste just aren't mine. And whenever I think of somebody that I want to direct a Superman movie, James Gunn is not my go-to person, right? And so that was like another strike against this thing to where it was like, okay, kind of discouraging. But then they cast this kind of guy who, like this guy named David Corenswet. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. It's kind of a weird last name. But they cast this guy as Superman. And this to me was a mixed bag as well. Because on one hand, obviously I immediately looked up clips of this guy acting. And I was like, hey, he actually does give off like a good kind of Clark Kent vibe. I get that. But in many ways, I think I was still frustrated by the whole Henry Cavill thing. And I was like, well, he kind of just looks like a blend between Henry Cavill and Christopher Reeve, which I guess could just suggest that he just looks like Superman because they all have that in common. But I don't know. I didn't really know anything about it, but I was willing to at least give him a fair shake, right? Because you know what? I've liked pretty much every iteration of Superman, and so let's see what he does, right? That was kind of my mentality going in. And then the first looks started coming out, right? And we started seeing first looks of, I think there was like, first off, there was this image that they posted of like James Gunn and David Corenswet and the lady playing Lois Lane. Wow, I'm blanking on her name. I know the name, but I'm blanking on it for some reason now. But they released this picture of like them like reading like comic books, and you could tell that he like bulked up a lot, but something about it just looked weird. And then they started releasing images of him in like the suit. They were like set photos that were leaking, and I was like, that's just not a great look of the suit. But I guess even before that had happened, they actually released that first poster of him, and he was like sitting there, and the suit just didn't look good to me, to where I was like, oh man, like it was just like one strike after another, right? You kick out Henry Cavill, who I know that, you know, I guess people have different opinions about the Henry Cavill suit, but that man looks like a Superman, right? I mean, first off, it's got that like alien texture to it and stuff like that, which I know a lot of people don't like. But I thought it was just a great suit, right? I mean, I like a lot of the different Superman suits, right? I think my least favorite is probably the Brandon Routh one because it just looks kind of weird. But I like the Christopher Reeve Superman suit, and I like the, you know, Henry Cavill Superman suit. I like all those. But this one, it just looked gross to me. And it looked very Marvel-ish to me, or honestly cosplay-ish, which I'm not unique in saying that. A lot of people have said stuff like that. But it just wasn't selling me, right? There was one strike after another. And then really the first thing that actually made me somewhat excited for this movie was that motion poster they released it a few days ago, right? Where they actually posted this poster and basically it's just Superman and he's just like, it looks like he's getting ready to fly or he's in the middle of flight and there's like color moving all around him and it just says, look up. And I saw that and I was like, okay, this might get me a little bit excited, right? Cause just something about it, the vibrancy and stuff, I was like, okay, I might be able to get on track with this. And then yesterday, they posted a teaser trailer for the teaser trailer, which That's a thing that people are doing nowadays, and it's kind of strange. But you know what? As a Superman fan, I'm not going to complain, right? I know it's kind of silly to do a teaser trailer for a teaser trailer, but you know what? That's okay. I am still like, as a Superman fan, whether or not I am excited about this movie is a big deal to me because ultimately it's like it's going to kind of dictate the future of Superman in cinema for the foreseeable future, right? Because if it tanks, that's not a good look. If it does really good, well, it's going to be what we're stuck with, right? And so either way, this is a big movie for me, right? So the movie trailer like that released today is probably one of my, this sounds kind of crazy because there's not like in the grand scheme of things, this is not a super significant thing in the world. But this movie trailer was probably one of my most anticipated things, like of recent times. And keep in mind, I'm getting married in less than 2 weeks, right? And obviously, this pales in comparison to me being excited to getting married. But I was still really looking forward to this movie trailer. And then they released the teaser for the teaser trailer yesterday, and I saw a lot of people getting really hyped about it. But honestly, I was super discouraged. I really liked the opening shot of the Daily Planet. Thought that was good. And then there was like the shot inside the Daily Planet where you see like the Daily Planet news team, and they looked pretty decent. But then you had the shots outside, and something about it just looked super cheap. And keep in mind, even though there's been all these strikes against the movie in my head, I want to love this movie. Like I genuinely want to, because as a Superman fan, I don't want like even though I'm sad that Henry Cavill's gone, I still want to have a good Superman, right? I don't want to hate this movie just because I like Henry Cavill. He's great, right? But I do want to move on, and so I want this movie to be great. And I was watching it, and I liked the music in the background, but that first part I was like, oh, this teaser trailer looks kind of rough. It looked cheap. It looked like something that belongs on a TV show, and so that kind of was deflating things for me a little bit. But I woke up today optimistic. Right? I woke up today optimistic. I brought my hat to school and I said, we are going to watch this trailer. And we watched the trailer and I watched it again and I watched it again. And I will say going into the trailer, I probably, I think it was actually Sean Chandler I saw where he had posted some sort of comment. I don't remember the exact quote, but I shared it on my Instagram story where it said something along the lines of, I've never been so nervous but excited for a movie trailer. And that's probably exactly how I was feeling, right? To where I've literally been thinking about the fact that this trailer was coming out today for several days now, and I've been excited about it. And I was nervous because I was like, okay, this is going to be the make or break moment. Like, this is going to be the thing that shows me whether or not I'm going to like this movie. And I wish I could say that ended up being the case. I really don't know, though. Because the teaser trailer, I will say, having watched it, I am more hopeful for this movie than I have been before. Like, it's where I actually can say that I genuinely am excited for this movie because the things I saw in this teaser trailer did get me excited. And they did pull on the emotions a little bit to where I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing here. And I think I can get behind it. There are some things that are negative to me that I'm still kind of trying to process. And so that's kind of why I'm filming this video, because I just want to share my thoughts, right? Once again, is this a super important thing in the grand scheme of things? No, but I think it's fun to talk about and I think it's fun to document, so I'm going to do it. And so let me just break it down, right? I'm going to talk about the good, the mixed, and the bad. The good stuff, probably the thing that I like, just that seems to be expressed in the trailer, in the teaser trailer, is that it seems like it's going to be a very hopeful movie, right? We know that this kind of goes back to the Henry Cavill stuff, when there's the whole scene between him and Lois where he says, oh, on my planet, it's not an S, it means hope. Yes, in those movies, the S meant hope, but you don't really see a lot of hope in those movies. They talk a lot about hope, but you really don't see it. And that's probably a big criticism that people have in those movies. There's, it's a Superman movie, but it's deprived of hope and joy. And a lot of people don't like it because of that. I really don't have an issue with that, right? I think that they were exploring really cool things, and I don't think every single Superman movie needs to be like the Christopher Reeve movies or anything like that, right? I think that you can explore different things with these characters. But I do really like hopeful stories, right? I mean, I'm a Bible teacher, right? We preach a gospel of hope. And so one thing that I like about this is that this seemed like a very hopeful thing. And that's kind of shocking because the teaser trailer begins with like Superman crash landing into the, Arctic wilderness, and he's like coughing up blood and stuff like that. That doesn't seem like a teaser trailer that preaches hope. But you can tell that this is a guy who is swimming against the tide, right? You have things coming against him on all different directions. And right off the bat, you do get to see that this version of Superman, he's got this optimism behind him, even though he's very we don't really see him smiling at all, right? which is interesting because a big criticism of the Henry Cavill Superman is that he didn't smile. And so you would think that they would try to include that in here, but they managed to include him being frustrated while also giving you this sense that he is committed to producing a better world, which I think is cool because that's kind of one thing that I will admit you didn't get in the Henry Cavill ones. In the Henry Cavill ones, he was frustrated and he was more like self-reflective in those ones, right? To where it didn't really seem like he was really committed to doing the right thing. Yes, he talked about doing the right thing a lot, but it seemed like he was more frustrated by the loneliness of being Superman. Whereas in this one, it doesn't seem like this Superman's really as focused on himself. He's more focused on what he can do for people. And I think that's really good, right? I think that both are valid interpretations of Superman because you have the loneliness over here and the commitment to serving others over here. But I do like that what we see in this teaser trailer is more hopeful. And the way that I think James Gunn has described this movie or this Superman is that he is a guy who promotes kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is outdated or old fashioned, right? I like that, right? I think that that is a good thing. And I think that's kind of conveyed in the trailer, even though we really don't see him smiling or anything like that. There's something about how the music is swelling and you kind of get that Christopher Reeve theme coming back in and stuff. I think that does help kind of convey that. And so I really do like the hopeful theme behind this. Another thing that I really like about this is Lois and Clark. I will say that in this 2-minute and 20-second teaser trailer, Lois and Clark already have more chemistry than Henry Cavill and Amy Adams ever had. I loved the Zack Snyder Superman movies, but my least favorite part of those movies is Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Amy Adams is a great actress. She even showed up in Smallville in one of the weirdest episodes of season 1. Amy Adams is a great actress, but I think she was miscast as Lois Lane. I think pretty much every actress we've had for Lois Lane has been great, except for Amy Adams, right? I loved the Lois and Clark. I love Superman and Lois. I love Smallville. I love the Superman with Christopher Reeve movies. I loved all those Lois Lanes. Amy Adams, not it, right? And they really just like their relationship always just felt kind of awkward and I don't know, like especially since they in the Henry Cavill movies they emphasized how alien he was so much. I would have hoped that Lois was the one who kind of made him feel human, but even in those scenes, like he still felt very alien, and it just felt weird. To where I don't know, it seemed like the Lois and Clark relationship in the Snyder movies was just forced, whereas in this teaser trailer, you already kind of get the idea. Okay, I know that James Gunn has described that, like, you know, at the beginning of this movie, it's not like Lois and Clark are together or anything like that. But obviously, I mean, spoiler alert, they're going to get together at some point because this movie has them like locking lips and embracing and stuff like that. And it's just very romantic. And I like that, right? There's a lot of comic book callbacks there. There's a lot of just, you know, callbacks to previous iterations of the superhero. And I just like I don't like the word vibe, but I've used it several times in this video. I like the vibe they're giving off, right? I like that version of Lois and Clark. And to me, it seems like they're going to do a really good job of how they handle that. Another thing that I like here is that for the first time in a Superman movie, we actually have an inclusion of Krypto. Like I mentioned, I had a dog whenever I was a little boy, and his name was Krypto. And that's probably because I also grew up watching that animated cartoon, Krypto the Super Dog. But Krypto did kind of show up in Smallville, right? Even though they ended up changing the name to Shelby. And then Krypto also recently showed up in the series finale of Superman and Lois. And so Krypto's getting the attention he deserves. And I will admit that I've always thought Krypto was a little bit of a goofy concept, but I like how he's utilized in this teaser trailer. And I just think it's cool. He's a really cute dog. Not typically the type of dog that I picture Krypto as, but still really cute. And I like him. And I think that if they use him how they used him there, it'll be cool. And I imagine they will sell a lot of stuffed animals and action figures of Krypto and make a lot of money off of that. So I did really like Krypto in this. I also like Lex Luthor. Nicholas Holt's just a really good actor, and I'm excited to see his version of Lex Luthor. I still think that Michael Rosenbaum is going to be very difficult to pass up as Lex Luthor. And it's always going to be difficult for a movie to surpass what people had the opportunity to do for 10 seasons in a TV show. To be fair, Michael Rosenbaum was only in 8 of those seasons, and really, I guess, 7 seasons in 1 episode. But his version of Lex Luthor is just absolutely fantastic, to where it's going to be hard to beat. But Nicholas Hoult does seem like probably a much more comic book accurate version of Lex Luthor. He is a little bit lankier than the Lex Luthor you typically see in the comics, but that also isn't a huge aspect of Lex, right? He doesn't have to be a physically imposing figure as much as he does have to be an intellectually imposing figure. And just the way that he reacts to Superman here, is very accurate to how we see Lex a lot of the times in the comic books, right? And in general, I think that we've had a lot of good Lex Luthors too. I think that Jesse Eisenberg gets a lot of hate from Batman versus Superman and stuff, but he just did what he was being asked to do. And while it's a very strange version of Lex Luthor, I think it doesn't like contradict what we see in the comics. I think it's still it's a valid interpretation of Lex. It's just very different, right? Definitely not my favorite version, but I'm excited to see what Nicholas Hoult does here too, and so I'm excited by that. And then probably the last really good thing that I like in this teaser trailer is that it seems like this movie is doing a good job of both looking back at where we've come from while also pushing forward to something new. And I don't know if I'm taking that from like, maybe I've heard a quote of people saying that's what this movie's trying to do or something like that. I don't know. But I kind of got that impression from this. I mean, first off, you have the Christopher Reeve theme evidently there, like throughout the trailer, right? It's a guitar riff, but it's the Superman theme from John Williams, right? I mean, that's what it is. I think it's cool, right? I wouldn't like, part of me does kind of wish that they would just kind of compose something a little bit different, even though I love the Superman theme by John Williams. I mean, I literally run to that thing because it just pumps me up all the time. But I like the John Williams theme. I wish they'd kind of done something different, but I can't help but deny that probably the reason why I felt so emotional watching the teaser trailer is because of the inclusion of the John Williams theme. And whenever you actually look at the other little sound tidbits that we've got in like the teaser for the teaser yesterday, or for the in the motion poster a few days ago, or in James Gunn's announcements and stuff, the different aspect, like the different sound bites that we've gotten from the score for this movie, it seems like it is kind of calling back not only to John Williams, but even to Hans Zimmer in Man of Steel and that stuff. And that makes me excited because I also liked Hans Zimmer stuff. And so I think it's cool that we're honoring where we came from, but also doing something new. And that doesn't just apply to the music, it applies to everything. To where I think that the way that, I think a lot of the stuff that we see here, and I think that Superman and Lois did this a lot too, it's honoring the legacy of Superman that we've had in the past, right? To where there's various different visual components in this trailer that call back to the various iterations of Superman that we've had, right? To where, to me, the Daily Planet building on the outside in this universe, it looks a lot to me like the one from Smallville, right? The interior looks like a little bit of a mix between like maybe the Superman Returns and Smallville and just various different things. And I think just that, like, visually speaking, there's a lot of different like call outs, and I'm going to talk about the suit again in a little bit, but the suit itself, in and of itself, is a Mod Podge of different iterations of Superman that we've seen both on the screen and on the page in comics. And so I think that that's kind of cool, right? I think that in many ways, this movie is supposed to serve as kind of a love story, or like, not a love story. It's like a poem reflecting on where we've come from, but also pushing us forward to what could be, right? And so it's kind of honoring what came before, and is blending all of that together to ideally produce like the ultimate Superman movie. And I think that's where I begin to start stepping into my negatives, and so this will be kind of a natural transition, because it's going to be hard for this movie to kind of have an identity of its own if it relies too heavily on what has come before, right? Because like I said, whenever I was watching this, I couldn't help but notice all these different visual cues that were reminding me of things we've already seen. And that's not inherently bad, but if that's the way you're trying to sell me this movie, then we might have an issue, right? I mean, if I watch the movie and the only callbacks are the stuff that we saw in the trailer, well, then that won't feel like a big deal. But if you're trying to nostalgia bait me into this movie, it makes me wonder if the movie really has much to say on its own, or if it's simply calling back to other things that were better. That's the thing that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. And so let me jump to the mixed stuff that I have, the mixed thoughts I have about this teaser trailer. And ultimately, the biggest issue I have, from a mixed perspective, where it really could go either way, it has to do with the universe that this movie is set in. And this is just a matter of personal taste. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but one issue I have is just the scale of the universe. I am really not, or let me say this. I prefer superhero movies that are smaller in scale. Not necessarily saying that they can't be like world-ending things. I just don't like there being millions of superheroes everywhere, right? I get that the comics set the precedent for stuff like that, but those have never been my favorite comics, right? Justice League, Avengers, stuff like that. That's never the things I was drawn to. I am much more Like, I'm more of a character driven person than I am an action driven person, right? And I want to explore characters deeply and know them thoroughly. And so I've always been attracted to stories that don't have as many characters and they're more focused on the individual characters and how they're being shaped. And so I think this movie could do that, but I think there's going to be a lot of fluff there as well. And that's the thing that makes me a little bit nervous. Because, like, whenever I look at the Marvel movies, first off, I've gotten tired of a lot of the Marvel movies. But my favorite ones are the standalone movies, right? I've always thought, I mean, I enjoy watching Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, but those movies are only satisfying to me because they are the conclusion of stuff that was established in the more standalone movies, right? And so to me, one of the biggest appeals about superheroes is that they are different, right? And maybe this is because I come, a Christian background and, the idea of something being holy is being set apart, right? And to me, the whole point of a superhero is that they are different, they're other, they're set apart. And whenever everybody in the story, like not when everybody, but whenever there's just a whole bunch of superheroes flying around and doing stuff, to me, it inherently makes the heroes less super, right? To where I just, it's frustrating to me because then it's almost like you feel bad for the everyday person who just doesn't have powers. You're like, oh, wow, sorry, bad luck of the draw. And so I've always kind of gravitated towards stuff where like Superman and Lois, right? And Superman and Lois, they kind of retconned everything and they decided to set their show in its own universe rather than in the Arrowverse. And I like that because Superman is really the main superhero and then others are kind of gradually introduced, but it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And I just always gravitate towards that. I get that that's a taste thing. And I think that even in this movie, they are going to emphasize that Superman is still set apart from the others. I think that's going to be the driving conflict of this movie. I think that a lot of the other superheroes are going to be sellouts who have become corrupt, and Superman is going to be this paragon of virtue in the midst of them. And I get that. And so I think that part of the movie I will love. But in general, I just don't like movies that are overcrowded with a bunch of superheroes because to me, it just detaches us further and further from the world. And I love exploring I love exploring the idea of superheroes from a human's eye view, if that makes sense, right? To where I love the idea of, like once again, Smallville, right? To where Smallville, over the course of 10 seasons, they didn't really begin expanding that universe until you got to like seasons 4 and 5. And season 10 of Smallville is probably one of it's got some of my favorite episodes, but it's also got some of my least favorite just because the world was, it was so much different from where it got started, right? The earlier seasons of Smallville, you just got a regular kid who realizes he has these super crazy powers and he's trying to explore what that looks like. And that is what's so fascinating to me about the Superman character and just about superheroes in general. And so the scope of this universe inherently is, it's just a drawback to me to where I think that it might be handled well. I'm sure James Gunn knows what he's doing and that since Warner Brothers messed up their previous universe so much, I'm sure that they're going to be very careful on how they handle this one. But it's just not my personal taste. And I think the thing that scares me about that is that this is where we're starting off at, right? It's not like we're doing like the MCU where it's like, we start off with just Iron Man and then Captain America and then we slowly build it up. It's like, no, we're starting this universe in a place that is already hyper populated with superheroes, which means it's only going to get bigger and we're never actually going to see what this universe looked like prior to there being superheroes, unless like 10 years down the road, they decide to do like a flashback thing or something like that. And so to me, that's a bit mixed, where I'm sure they'll handle it well, but it's just not my personal taste. And on that same note, another issue that I have with this is the idea of all this being established in like when Superman is just kind of getting started, right? And I know that they've said that Superman, like this is not an origin story for Superman. He's already been doing his thing for a while. But given how much, like how many superheroes there are and like given like the background of some of these superheroes and stuff like that, it's evident that in the context of this universe, Superman is not the first superhero. And as a Superman fan, I don't know, like that just seems kind of weird. Like, I guess technically Superman doesn't have to be the first superhero. And even in the comics, it's not like that's what he was. Well, I mean, I guess historically speaking, that is quite literally what he was because he was the first one created in 1938. But in the continuity of the comics, I understand that that's not exactly how it works. And he's not always the first superhero and stuff like that. But I do think that there's a beauty. Like if you're wanting to send the message that Superman truly is the best of them, I like the idea of him being the first one who shows up and then he kind of sets in motion a series of events that leads to the creation of the rest of this universe, to where you get the idea that he is really the patriarch of the superheroes. Whereas I think just kind of the context of this movie is that there's a bunch of superheroes, and basically Superman is going to just rise to the top. And that's just not, to me, as it's not as appealing of a story, because if you're trying to make Superman be somebody who inspires people, that's just really not quite. Like, I mean, he's going to still inspire people, but in a different way, right? You're not going to see it as in as drastic a way. And surprisingly, this is actually where the Snyder movies actually succeeded. I think they could have executed it better, but we do get to see that through Superman's sacrifice in Batman versus Superman, that actually serves as the catalyst, which inspires other heroes to step out in Justice League. And so, like I said, it could have been executed better, but I did like that idea, right? To where Superman, he is the one who forces other people out, not by like taking them and forcing them, but by his sheer example. People are motivated to go out and be better people. I think that's great. And so I think that they will still touch subjects like that in this movie, but I just like the idea of Superman being the first one, or at least at the very beginning of it. And so the idea of this being established and it wasn't really established with Superman, that's kind of weird. Like Superman is still so kind of young. I don't know. Like that's just kind of something that I'm still not totally sold on. And I'm still not sold on James Gunn. I don't really know what to say beyond that. I just, looking at this movie, like the teaser trailer, there's aspects of it that I really did like, but and like I said, I'm super excited about it. Like this actually got me pumped about the movie to where I am hopeful. But there's also aspects of it to where it just looks kind of bland, which then leads me to the bad, which I don't really have many bad things to say here. I know it sounds like I'm criticizing a lot, but I'm just trying to share my honest thoughts. When it comes to the bad stuff, first off, I still do not like the suit. I cannot stand it. I like the colors of the suit. I think that color palette is nice. I just think the suit looks weird. I can't tell what, I'm sure it might be explained in the movie, right? We're not supposed to know all this stuff from a teaser trailer, but I don't know what message it's supposed to be sending. I get that. I don't know. I've heard this quote going around lately. I guess that James Gunn had said this, that basically David Cornsweet was the one who had convinced him to do the trunks, right? Like the red trunks. And I like the trunks. I've never understood why that's such a huge debate. I don't really care if there's trunks on the suit or not. It's just really whatever looks better to me. I think it can work either way. I liked Christopher Reeve with the trunks. I liked Henry Cavill without the trunks. It's not a big deal. I don't get why it's controversial. But I saw this whole thing where James Gunn was talking about how David Cornsweet's the one who had convinced him to do the trunks, because he was talking about how Superman's an imposing figure and he wears the trunks to kind of be goofy and stuff. And that was kind of weird to me. Like I've seen a lot of people be like, "Oh man, this actor just really knows his stuff," and that's like such like a insight to the character. And I guess like to me, I was just like, it's not that deep. Like on one hand, that didn't seem like a super deep insight into the character of Superman. Like, of course, he wants to be less imposing to children. And I guess you could argue that that's a deeper insight than maybe you see in like the Zack Snyder movies, right? Because it didn't seem like that's what that Superman was super focused on. But also, I don't know. I don't get that message from the suit that they designed, right? It would be one thing if he was in like, a skin tight suit and then he was like, and if the red trunks looked like goofy on him, then I'd be like, okay, he's trying to make kids laugh or something like that. But that's just not the vibe that I get from the suit. Like to me, whenever I look at the suit, it just looks like a baggy costume that this guy is wearing, and it looks more like a military outfit. And all because there's things that look roughly like red shorts or red trunks on there, I don't see how that would be less intimidating to kids. And so I'm not fully buying that. Like it was an interesting quote, and I kind of get what they're going for, but to me, the suit design doesn't match what they're saying. Because to me, if I was a kid and I saw this guy walking around in that suit, I wouldn't feel more or less intimidated by him because of the red trunks right there. I don't know. That was kind of weird. So I'm not totally sold on the suit. And so that's something that I still think really honestly just looks bad. Because I've literally seen just cosplay that looks better. And almost every single artistic rendition that I've seen of this suit to me just looks better. And so that's just that's just something that kind of frustrates me, is that even leading up before the first posters were released, I saw all these like AI generated things or just artistic renditions of David Cornsweet as Superman, and those things got me excited because I was like, man, now that is a cool suit. I would love to see him in that. And then what we got, I'm just like, oh, okay. I mean, that's all right. I mean, I would love to have I wouldn't complain if I had a suit like that, but to me, I just don't know what they're going for. Like I said, it's probably gonna be explained in the movie, but I can't tell if it's supposed to be like something that the military gave him or if like his mom made it for him. I don't know how a farmer in Kansas would be able to make a suit like that, because that's a really nice suit. But it's just kind of I don't know. I still not sold on the suit. then the other bad thing is just like the color palette of the movie itself. I will say that I did like the color palette of the teaser trailer a lot more than the teaser for the teaser, because like I said, the teaser for the teaser I thought looked super cheap and just like bad. Like I genuinely just thought it was no good whatsoever. This looks a lot better, but to me it also just looks very MCU-ish. And that's one thing that I did like about the Snyder movies is that they did look visually different, to where I will say there were some very like breathtaking, just like stills like from like there are certain parts of this teaser trailer where I'm like, that's beautiful, but a lot of it also just looked very drab and like, yes, it's colorful, but to me, I don't know, like I think a lot of people like they emphasize that the Snyder movies were desaturated and stuff like that, but all because you up the saturation doesn't mean that that inherently makes the movie like more visually appealing, right? That's like if you just like are going to post a picture on Instagram and you just up the saturation to 200, that's not going to like make the picture better, right? There's different things that you can do to like color grade things to actually make it look superior, and it just didn't look like that exciting of a movie. Whereas like to me, like Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, say whatever you want about them. Those movies, almost every single shot, if you just pause it and take a screenshot, that is something that you could put on a canvas and just hang on the wall, because they're just beautiful, right? And I just like that. And if you're wanting to set the DC movies apart from Marvel, I think that's the best approach to take, because the Marvel movies, they all look the same, right? There's notable exceptions, but by and large, they all just look very, very similar. To where if you had not seen the different Marvel movies and you were to just like, I don't know, take screenshots of different ones and put them all next to each other, you would just think they're from the same movie. And so one thing that I would love, and this is probably because I'm a Superman fan, I would love Superman to be treated with that air of reverence where it's like his movies are treated like masterful works of art, not just copy and paste movies. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I'm just saying that the teaser trailer didn't totally sell me on the fact that that's what they're going for. Whereas I do think that Snyder did a really good job of almost giving Superman like a mythological proportion to himself, which I think is fitting of the character. And so, all being said, I'll wrap this up because I've rambled for way longer than I should have, and that's kind of expected of me. I am excited for this movie, right? I am hopeful for this movie, and I really, really want to like it. And I'm hoping that James Gunn doesn't let me down, because I love me some Superman. And if they're going to cancel Superman and Lois, which was it was one of the best versions of Superman ever. If they're going to cancel that so that we can get this thing going, I want it to be good. And so if I'm criticizing things, it's not because I want to criticize them. It's because I'm just sharing my thoughts. I genuinely do want this to be a really good movie, and I hope it takes me by surprise. There's a lot of things that I'm excited about. There's some things that I'm mixed about but can be won over on. And there's some things I already just know I'm not going to be a big fan of, such as the suit and the color grading, but that's okay, right? Those things are less important, right? Ultimately, I don't like, if it's a bad suit, that's okay, because Superman isn't defined by his suit. He's defined by who he is, right? And ultimately, the color grading, it might change the movie. It's like, it might make the movie look a little bit inferior, but that's okay. I'm more concerned with the story, right? So the things that I don't like ultimately aren't that big. The things that I'm mixed on, I can be won over on. It's just a matter of how they handle it. And the things that I'm excited about, I'm really excited about. And so, I don't know if I'm ever going to do another update on the Superman stuff, but I just thought this would be a little time capsule thing that would be kind of fun to talk about. And so, there are my long-winded thoughts about this teaser trailer. And with that, my throat is on fire because I've been sick for the last 2 weeks. I'm going to go and take a nap. And that is all I have to say about that. Have a great day. Keep a smile on your face. Don't let anybody steal your joy. And of course, remember who you are. Oh, and don't forget to look up.